soil, and some of it is diffused. Some of the carbon compounds are there in the aquatic ecosystems as well. So from there, as well as from the fossil fuels. So when we are burning fossil fuels, there is emissions of carbon compounds. So there is a carbon cycle. The simple representation can be this. Okay. So using the phenomenon of photosynthesis, plants fix the carbon dioxide, and then there is a dead matter which is falling upon the earth, and the decomposers act upon this waste matter, and they return it into the soil. Okay. Also, we have oxygen cycle, which is one of the most essential compounds for us. It is created by plants while the process of photosynthesis takes place, that is carbon dioxide is absorbed and oxygen is released by many of the plants during day. And we have nitrogen cycle. So what happens in the nitrogen cycle? Nitrogen is also, you must be knowing, it is an important part of the amino acids, and it forms the important part of the ribonucleic acid also, right? So it plays an important role in DNA formation. Okay, so atmospheric nitrogen, we have atmospheric nitrogen that is deposited over the surface of Earth and also fixed by some plants. So they are absorbed by the root nodules of the plants, and they are fixed in the soils as these root nodules. Then there is blue-green algae in the marine environment, which also absorbs the atmospheric nitrogen, and then it is eaten up by the plants, and they are converted into animal proteins. And again, when these animals and other organisms they decay or they become dead, then it leads to deposition of these nitrogenous compounds into the marine sediments. Okay. And in using plants, when there some plants which are nitrogen fixing plants, and which can harbor the nitrogen fixing bacteria in the soil near the root, and they are also fixing the nitrogen as nitrates. Okay. And during lightning also there is formation of these nitrates. So along with the water, these nitrates fall upon the soil and they increase the soil nitrate, and this is absorbed by the plants. Okay. And they are taken up by the plant roots and converted into plant animal and proteins. So similar to the marine environment, here also nitrate is taken up and it is recycled back by conversion into ammonium salts, and then nitrifying bacteria act upon them to convert it back to the soil nitrates. Okay. And also we have artificial inorganic fertilizers which have nitrogen, so that is also deposited in the soil. Okay. And we know the most of many of the fertilizer companies are dependent upon naphtha for the ammonia, and nitrogen is an important part of that. Okay. Then we have denitrifying bacteria in these kind of marshy areas which release the nitrogen back into the atmosphere, and volcanic actions. So natural reasons are there for emissions of nitrogen, recycling of nitrogen back into the atmosphere. Okay, so this is a simplified form of the what we discussed right now. So atmospheric nitrogen, yeah, it is utilized by the it is converted by the bacteria in the leguminous nodules, and they are converted into organic nitrogen, which form the amino acids and the proteins. Okay, in the form of amino acids and proteins. Then they are converted into ammonia salts, nitrates, and then recycled back into the atmosphere. While in between, the nitrates are absorbed by the plants and the animals, and some of them are recycled back, and then they again recycle back into the atmospheric nitrogen. Okay. Okay, over here you can see one thing, that this is nitrosation, that is conversion of ammonia salts into nitrates, that is done by the autotrophic bacteria. Okay, and this is done by the heterotrophic bacteria. Okay. And then we have sulfur cycle, which is also an important component of DNA, of amino acids. And the sulfur cycle is that elementary sulfur is oxidized by the bacterium into sulfates, and which is also released by weathering of rocks, and sulfur dioxide, which is released by industries. Okay, and that forms the sulfates, and this is absorbed by the plants and animals, and they're converted into plant and animal protein. Okay, the waste matter that is coming out, again, that is decaying into and forming hydrogen sulfide. And also, while the digestion process takes place, there is formation of hydrogen sulfide. Okay, and by bacterial photosynthesis, this hydrogen sulfide is also absorbed, and it is converted back into the elementary sulfur. Okay. And similar to the the other cycles, we have the phosphorus cycle that comes from the rocks and the soils. And during the runoff, when there are weathering agents acting upon the rock, like water flow or air gushes, then it leads to runoff into the lakes and streams, where it is converted into inorganic phosphates. Okay, and absorbed by the plants into in the phosphate form, that phosphate ion form. And it is converted by metabolism, it is converted into adenosine triphosphate. Okay, and this adenosine triphosphate is the energy molecule which is consumed by the animals and again converted into phosphate. This kind of recycling takes place by the plants, and by consumers, and then ultimately it is decomposed and recycled back into the soil. Okay. So we have energy cycle, and in the pyramid we saw that why it does have a pyramid like structure, because animals use energy for breathing, digesting food, for supporting the growth of the tissues, maintaining blood flow and body temperature, for finding food, for looking for food, finding shelter, and for breeding and bringing up the young ones. For all of these activities, the animals require energy, and that's why there is a energy loss at each trophic level. Okay. So this we have discussed, and there is an integration of cycle. These cycles are the whatever cycles we mentioned: carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, for sulfur, phosphorus. All these cycles, they are integrated, and they are dependent upon each other. They are known as biogeochemical cycles. Okay, and each of the ecosystems that we see, so forest ecosystem, desert ecosystem, or any aquatic ecosystems, all of them have specific features and in the ways in which they interact with the cycles: carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle. Okay, so these cycles are linked to each other, and their characteristics are specific to the plants and communities in that region. So the plants and animals, they have adapted themselves to those kind of conditions. This is related to the geographical features of the area, the climate, and the chemical composition of the soil. And together, these cycles are responsible for maintaining life on Earth. And if a mankind disturbs these cycles beyond the limits that the nature can sustain, they will eventually break down and lead to a degraded Earth, which on which man will not be able to survive. So that's why we should pay attention to what kind of changes we are causing to these natural cycles, and try to live in harmony. And then we will talk about ecological succession. So we took the example of pond ecosystem, I think, in the introduction. So ecological succession is the change in ecosystem over a period of time. So what kind of change is occurring over a short period of time or over a longer period of time? So if we are observing ecological succession over short periods of time, it is the natural ecological succession that we are observing. And when we are observing over a very long period of time, then that ecological succession may be human created, that is man made, or it may be natural. Okay, so uh, succession means change in any ecosystem over a period of time. So I think we took the example of pond ecosystem. So pond ecosystem, where it fluctuates from a dry terrestrial habitat to a early colonization by small aquatic species after the monsoon. That इसका मतलब monsoon के just बाद there is creation of ponds बन जाते हैं. Okay, and earlier they were dry terrestrial habitat. Before the monsoon, those areas were dry, but after the monsoon, some areas with some gradient, they form the pond where small aquatic species are found. Okay, which gradually passes through mature aquatic ecosystems and then reverts back to the dry stage in the summer. So there is a natural cycle of the pond ecosystems. Okay, small ponds. Okay, okay. So one can predict that an opened up area, that if a area is left open, that is without any human interference, what will happen to that open area? That will be gradually converted into a grassland, then a shrubland, that is small plants and little large grasses, bushes. Okay, so these kind of smaller plants together, they are known as shrubland, and then finally into a woodland, that is many trees growing together, and a forest. Okay, so that is the ecological succession that will occur naturally if a piece of land, if an area, specified area, is left without any human interference. Okay, the tendency for succession to produce more or less stable state at the end of each successional stage. So there are three stages. Okay, first is known as the pioneer stage. Okay, that is the initial stage of the change. Then there are some successive series of changes, they are known as serial stage. And then the final climax stage. Okay, so these are the stages of ecological succession, and at the end of each climax stage, it tries to reach an equilibrium. So the successive stages are related to the way in which energy flows through the biological systems. So more and more series of changes are there when there is a lot of energy, and as the energy starts fading down, there is climax stage. Okay. So in each of these ecosystems, there are food webs and food chains. Okay. So what are food webs? Anyone can आप लोग बता सकते हैं कि food webs क्या होते हैं? Yes. Yes. What are food webs?
जो सब फ्रूट और जो सब होते हैं जो तो हम ईट करते हैं तो जो चैन बनती है फूड की उसको फूड वेब बोलते होंगे सर शायद।
क्या रिपीट करिए आप थोड़ा लाउडली, क्या होते हैं
जो
फूड
सर
वेब्स?
हम प्लांट पे जो होता है जो वो ईट करते हैं मतलब फ्रूट और जो सब वो हम ईट करते हैं तो जो फूड चेन बनती होगी उसको फूड वेब बोलता है।
ओके, yes, partly correct, but whenever we are describing food web, जब भी food web को describe कर रहे हैं so we need to understand that each of the species, जैसे आपने अपने बारे में बात किया, plant material खाते हैं हम, plant matter, herbivorous animals हैं many of us. So transfer of energy कहाँ से हो रही है? From the plants over here to the organisms, that is from the primary producers to the primary consumers. ऐसे ही each organisms, it may be a plant or it may be an animal, सब किसके ऊपर डिपेंडेंट है? कुछ अदर स्पीशीज के ऊपर डिपेंडेंट है फॉर प्रोवाइडिंग देम विथ फूड. जैसे ह्यूमंस हैं वो प्लांट मटेरियल पे डिपेंडेंट हैं, फूड रिसोर्सेज जो कि आपको मराइन इन्वायरमेंट से मिलते हैं या फ्रेश वाटर से मिलते हैं उन पे डिपेंडेंट हैं, राइट? एंड लाइफ स्टॉक पे भी डिपेंडेंट हैं कई लोग, एनिमल्स पे डिपेंडेंट हैं. ओके, सो देयर इज अ food web that is formed. So let's I think I have covered this initially, but anyways, so this is the kind of structure that we see when we write food web. Why? Because each of these species is dependent upon many other species for its survival, right? And that makes a web-like structure. Okay, and many of these food webs they are disturbed by human intervention. How? Because the humans will cause overutilization of a particular species, which can lead to loss or extinction of those species, and the food web breaks down. So then the other species which were dependent upon, let's say a fish, a particular type of fish, they do not have sufficient amount of food for their growth. And food chains uh, are the components of the food webs. Okay, so we saw over here a food webs. Okay, and if we just want to concentrate upon a particular aspect of the food web, we can take into consideration a food chain. Okay, that the at the top, at the bottommost, we have the plant matter, which plants are there in that ecosystem. Okay, then which are the primary consumers, then secondary consumers, and then the apex consumers, and the types of decomposers. So in this way we can form a food chain in a particular ecosystems. Okay, similarly, we in the aquatic ecosystems we can do the same. The zooplankton, phytoplanktons, the plant seaweeds, and the other plant material, that is growing in the marine environment, that is eaten up by the fishes, smaller and larger fishes, and then these fishes are eaten up by the carnivorous larger fishes. Okay, and it is they are fished out by the humans. So overutilization of one particular type of fish will lead to breakdown of this whole food web. Okay, and the species which were earlier dependent upon a particular species of fish, then they will have to look for other options. Okay, so if we are looking at a particular part of the food web, okay, some of the linkages and nodes of the food web, then we call them as food chains. Okay, so in the terrestrial ecosystems, we have this kind of pyramid, that is the plants, the fodder for livestock. Okay, for the aquatic ecosystems, we have smaller microorganisms. Okay, and which are then eaten up by the smaller fishes, larger fishes, and ultimately by humans. Okay, okay. There are some values that we derive from these ecosystems. These values are direct values, that is, their indirect values. We have consumptive value. Okay, we I think we discussed this in the forest resource, in context to forest resource, that there is some consumptive use. Okay, for the non market value. Okay, for consumption, people who collect them from these ecosystems, they are consuming these resources. They may be fruit, fodder, it may be fish, okay, or firewood. So for consumption, for the people who collect these resources, it provides consumptive use value. Then when they sell it, they get the commercial value of the timber, fish, medicinal plants. Okay. So then that value is known as the productive use value. Okay. And then there are some indirect values. So there is some non-consumptive use value, just such as scientific research. Some of the medicinal plants, some of the trees, they can be utilized for scientific research. Okay, and bird watching, ecotourism. Okay, for visiting the place. Okay. Mm. So they have other values which are indirect values, are option value. That if we maintain those ecosystems, then for the future we will be able to reap economic benefits of these ecosystems, because each of these ecosystems have has a very important role in the environment. That's why keeping them conserved will lead to option value. Okay, it will give us option value in future. Then existence value. So there are they ethically and emotionally and also aesthetically, like when we look at these ecosystems, they have some value because they are existing in the wildlife and the nature. So they have some indirect values, which are these, and the direct values, which are consumptive and productive values. And now we will talk about the types of ecosystems, that are the forest ecosystems. Okay, in forest ecosystems, we see that to protect these forest ecosystems, we have created national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. Okay, in the forest ecosystems, we have coniferous forests, which are found in on the higher altitudes, and the broadleaf forests, which are found on the lower altitudes. Okay. So in the forest ecosystems, we have evergreen forest, deciduous forest, xerophytic. They are also known xerophytic are also known as the thorn forests, thorn trees, and mangrove forest, which are found on the river deltas. Okay. Okay, I think we'll keep it till here today. In the next lecture, we'll learn about the differentiation between these type of forest resources and other ecosystems as well. Okay, if you have any doubt, then you can ask. Yes, any doubt?
सर एनवायरमेंट साइंस का क्लासरूम है गूगल क्लासरूम
हाँ है ना.
कोड क्या है सर दे दो ना एक बार फिर से
Okay. यस, आप इनमें से कौन सी क्लास में हैं?
आईसी में
आईसी में, आईसी ब्रांच में है.
यस
ओके. इसमें है आपका नाम?
सर ईपीएम वाला ही क्लासरूम में एनवायरमेंट साइंस में हाँ सर है ना
नहीं,
ओके
आप
सर
इसमें इसमें हैं क्या?
हाँ सर है
ओके, तो मैं जिस इसका नाम चेंज कर दे रहा हूँ. ठीक है. सेमेस्टर टू. ठीक है. ये सेम टू. ओके.
सर और पीपीपी भी अपलोड कर देना उस पे
हाँ. ओके, कोई डाउट है तो अब बताइए, ये तो मैं कर दे रहा हूँ. ठीक है. दिस इज द बुक in case you require that. Okay, these are the external papers. The pattern may change. Okay, but 30 marks will be maybe subjective and 30 marks may be objective. Okay. And PPTs. Let me add these first. Okay. And okay. Okay, I'll upload this these PPTs. I'll upload these PPTs right now. Okay, but they may require some changes. So don't just mug up the data that is given. Okay, but yes, understand the concepts. And in case you have any doubt, refer to the book. So I have uploaded the book. Refer to that book. Let me write. So this is for the first three chapters. Okay. Okay. If there is anything else, then you can ask. Otherwise, that's it for today. Which is your next lecture?
EG.
EG. Okay. Okay. Then don't make any noise. Okay. Then the next lecturer will come. Okay.